Donald Trump is in Asia, and while the headlines want to keep you focused on the China threat, the real threat to Donald Trump's agenda is not coming from the president of China. It's coming from the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who went to the ASEAN summit in Malaysia to defend globalization and try and sabotage Trump's economic revolution. But if you read the press, it's all about China. But contrary to those headlines and constant warnings of trade war and confrontation with China, the United States and China announced substantial progress yesterday. Treasury Secretary Bessent and his Chinese counterpart finalized a preliminary trade framework in advance of the Trump-Xi summit later this week. By contrast, Trump suspended all trade talks with Canada right before he left for Asia. And on Air Force One last night, President Trump said that Canada has been one of the most difficult countries to deal with. And when asked if he would meet with Prime Minister Carney at the APEC summit, said,
Canada has been ripping us off for a long time. One of the most difficult countries to deal with has been Canada. As much as I love Canada itself and the people of Canada, they've just had a lot of bad representatives. They did a fake ad yesterday. They were caught.
Will you see him in APEC? Do you want to meet with him?
I don't want to meet with them. No, I'm not going to be meeting with them for a while. No, I'm very happy with the deal we have right now with Canada. We're going to let it ride.
I'm Susan Kokinda, and I've been in this fight since the 1970s, when the modern British Empire escalated its economic attacks on the United States and other sovereign nations. I've been part of a group of people who have stayed focused on that fight over the decades, and immediately we saw that Donald Trump represented the first real chance to restore our sovereignty. And what's unfolding in Asia this week is part of that fight, and we're going to take you behind the scenes. So if you like what you're hearing, please hit those like and subscribe buttons and help us spread our reach on YouTube. Today, I'm going to look at two sides of the Asia trip. First, how Trump is wielding the sovereignty principle on behalf of the United States and other nations. Second, how Carney is the empire's Trojan horse at the summit. So let's start with what the media won't tell you about Trump's victories. The big political event was the Trump-brokered peace deal signed by Cambodia and Thailand. Prime Minister Anwar of the host country, Malaysia, added his thanks to Trump and underscored what is unique about Donald Trump.
You personally did call both prime ministers to urge for a speedy peace settlement. I would say a great thank you. And we, of course, admire your tenacity, your courage, because the world needs leaders who promote peace strongly. And to achieve that, you have to break some rules, as you did today.
And the rules that the president breaks are the globalist rules. In addition to that peace agreement, Trump and his team were busy lining up bilateral trade deals with Vietnam, Malaysia, Cambodia, and Thailand. 3 of those agreements involved the vital question of strategic minerals and rare earths. But of course, the headline grabber was the preliminary trade framework negotiated by Treasury Secretary Bessent, Trade Ambassador Jameson Greer, and their Chinese counterparts in advance of the Xi-Trump summit later this week. It looks like all of the key sticking points have been addressed. De-escalation of the tariff war, Chinese purchases of American agriculture, lifting China's restrictions on the export of rare materials, and joint action on fentanyl. Now, Trump has been very confident that this would work out. Why? Because unlike the Anglo-American types on both sides of the pond, he's not negotiating from the standpoint that the United States and China are adversaries. On his way to Asia on Air Force One, a reporter asked a question typical of imperial geopolitical thinking, i.e., if one power wins, the other power loses. This is what Trump had to say.
Mr. President, with you in Asia making all of these deals in China's backyard, what should they take away from the strong U.S. presence in this region?
I don't think they should take away anything. I think we're going to have a good deal with China. I think we're going to make a deal. It's going to be great for China, great for us.
Because he doesn't think one side has to lose. He thinks like the leader of a sovereign nation who respects the sovereignty of other nations and knows that if the pie grows, everybody benefits. It's worth it to look back to the last time Trump went to an ASEAN meeting in person. That was 8 years ago. It was in Vietnam, and Trump gave a remarkable speech. In it, he described a vision for the world which threatened to drive a stake into the heart of the geopolitical model.
I am confident that together, every problem we have spoken about today can be solved and every challenge we face can be overcome. If we succeed in this effort, if we seize the opportunities before us and ground our partnerships firmly in the interests of our own people, then together we will achieve everything we dream for our nations and for our children. We will be blessed with a world of strong, sovereign, and independent nations, thriving in peace and commerce with others. They will be places where we can build our homes and where families, businesses, and people can flourish and grow. If we do this, we will look at the globe half a century from now, and we will marvel at the beautiful constellation of nations, each different, each unique, and each shining brightly and proudly throughout this region of the world.
Now, think back to when he gave that speech in November 2017. Russiagate was in full swing. His administration had been stuffed with neocons and globalists, many of whom later got fired, and they were not going to let that happen. But Trump 2.0 is a completely different administration, and Trump is going for it. The whole thing. A world of sovereign nations free of globalism and financial imperialism. And who knows what else might occur this week. Trump has thrown out the possibility of meeting North Korea's Kim Jong-un during the South Korea part of the trip. I'm sure Trump would really like to resume the negotiations that were sabotaged in 2018 by then National Security Advisor John Bolton, who threatened Korea with the Libya model, which is the equivalent of saying the Gaddafi treatment. Happily, John Bolton is not only no longer influencing this administration, he's under indictment by the Trump Justice Department. Now let's take a deeper look at the current deals the U.S. is negotiating with these Asian nations, because there's an important pattern to see. Every single one of these deals bypasses multilateral institutions, whether it's the TPP, the UN, or the World Trade Organization. Trump is proving that sovereign nations can cooperate directly without these supranational bureaucracies lording it over them. And that's what terrifies the British establishment. Because if Trump succeeds in replacing globalist institutions with nation-to-nation partnerships around the world, the entire post-war control structure collapses. Now, if what I just showed you, this bypassing of the institutions that have controlled global trade and economics for over 80 years, sounds like a story you haven't heard anywhere else, there's a reason. Because the mainstream media won't connect the dots, because their owners and editors are part of the system Trump is dismantling. That's why Promethean Action puts together detailed intelligence briefings, strategic analysis, and organizing tools that you're not going to find anywhere else. So use the link on the screen and go to our website and subscribe to our free newsletter. Now, that brings us to the man who's been deployed to stop this, the British Empire's Field General, Mark Carney. Right before the Malaysia summit, trade talks between Carney's Canada and the United States blew up, precipitated by those Canadian ads attacking Trump's tariff policies aired in major U.S. TV markets. Trump did Trump and promptly canceled U.S. trade talks. But Carney's approach in Kuala Lumpur has been a little less open than those ads, but no less confrontational. Carney called Trump's trade policies a rupture, not a transition, and in several speeches to ASEAN audiences, Carney tried to position Canada as Asia's champion for free trade, sustainability, and their rules-based order. Of course, Carney is the central banker's central banker, having gone from the Bank of Canada to the Bank of England. And now he's back in Canada as Prime Minister with one assignment: ramp up Canada's role as the British Empire's Trojan horse against American sovereignty in forums like ASEAN. Not only did Carney announce that Canada is racing to complete the Canada-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, but he also revealed the empire's role for Canada, pointing out that Canada is the only country with ties to the European Union, ASEAN, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The EU and the TPP are classic examples of the institutions that override sovereignty and national interests, sacrificing those interests in favor of free trade and environmentalism, which is why Trump pulled out of the TPP in his first term and why it had to be reconfigured. Carney wants to tie ASEAN nations more tightly to the EU and the TPP and keep them in the globalist trap. And at the center of all of that, the City of London, the Fed, the international banks. It's not surprising that at ASEAN, Carney went out of his way on more than one occasion to remind nations that Canada controls financing for mining development.
We are the largest center of mining finance in the world. So we have the resources, we have the mining finance, and we have the standards around sustainable development.
How about that? Canada is the largest center of mining finance in the world. What a surprise. And Carney also revealed that he's pulled together essentially an economic war cabinet clearly aimed at the United States. He gloated that he has top financiers on board, including somebody who, as he said, survived working under Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. And he dropped another little bombshell that the IMF has been essentially wargaming how to deal with Trump's challenge to their free trade world order. So if you listen to Carney's remarks, you get a pretty clear picture of how fully deployed Canada, and by extension, the City of London, are against Trump. So here you have it all in the same summit. You have Carney in conference rooms, boasting of financial checkpoints and pushing ASEAN more tightly into the grip of free trade and green organizations. And on the other, you have Trump saying, let's make a deal that serves your country's interests and America's interests. No middlemen, no supranational bureaucracies, just two sovereign nations cooperating. Which offer do you think serves actual Asian nations better? So let me bring this full circle. The British geopoliticians and their neocon and media puppets want you to think that China is America's existential enemy. But it's Mark Carney from the Bank of England who's enforcing the globalist policies and positioning Canada to keep the very Asian nations that Trump is making deals with in the globalist fold. That's the real divide. It's about two completely different visions of how the world economy should work. The American system of sovereignty versus the British system of globalization. So if you want to better understand this fight, join Promethean Action's growing community of patriots on every continent. A paid membership or contribution helps us tremendously so that we can expand our reach and our organizing. Because it's not about geography or ideology, it's about this. Trump's vision, which is partnerships between sovereign nations and mutual development where national interests drive policies, and Carney's vision, where globalist interests, international banks, and free trade and green agenda rule over nations. One system builds nations, the other system strips them. That's the real story of Kuala Lumpur that neither Fox nor CNN nor the London Guardian will tell you. We'll be following it as it plays out this week as Trump continues his Asia trip.